Hello and welcome to another video by me, this tutor, and today we're looking at AQA Paper 1, Germany Depth Study, and we're going to look at race and discrimination, and we're going to look at some interpretation skills. Okay, so the race and discrimination topic is quite a big topic on the exam, and obviously lots and lots of historical interpretations about this. So it's well worth having a practice on some historical interpretation skills. On the paper 1 for AQA, obviously it's 3 questions in the exam are on those 2 interpretations you're given. So well worth another practice. So before we go and practice further, do revise your race and discrimination and knowledge against Jews and people with disabilities and how Hitler was trying to create the perfect master race. Have a look at my revision pages on that and my revision video, and then come back and we'll test your knowledge and see how much you know. Okay, here's a little activity just to test your understanding of the keywords for Nazi race laws and also about just generally race, anti-Semitism, discrimination. Okay, very difficult to choose an activity for such a somber event, but perhaps have a look through, see what keywords you can find there or tend to find. You can pause and have a look through. And here are the answers. So we had anti-Semitism in there somewhere, obviously, which is the discrimination towards Jewish people. Aryan, where that's obviously the race idea of that Hitler and the Nazis had, that the Aryans were the top race in terms of social Darwinism. They were the best race in this social Darwinistic survival of the fittest, this war of the races. And Aryans had obviously blonde hair, blue eyes, that type of thing. You also would have found Teuton in there, which was a brown-haired German like Hitler is, which was deemed to be the second best race. Then some events in terms of anti-Semitism, Nuremberg laws, the laws that decided who should marry who and banned sexual relations and marriage between Germans and Jewish people. Then Kristallnacht, where 1938 the SS smashed lots of Jewish property and murdered Jewish people. So lots of some key events there around the 1930s, and then of course into 1940s when the war develops and more Jewish people are into the lands held by the Nazi Germans. So with the invasion of Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Russia, and Poland, of course, millions of Jewish people in control of the Nazis. And so they ghettoize them, they put them into ghettos, splits of cities that are split off from the rest of the population, not much food, medicine, the sort of big prison almost. And then obviously they're used as labor in some of the factories. They're taken out and work in factories making weapons and other things. So Krakow, Warsaw, these are famous ghettos. And of course, by 1944, the final solution has been decided on. The Wannsee Conference decided on the mechanized murder and genocide of the Jewish population of Europe. And so the Holocaust begins. But there is also other people involved. So we've got euthanasia there. So children, babies were often killed who had mental or physical disability, and the euthanasia law came in 1938 and started actively taking lives in 1939. But even before that, there was a sterilization law that tried to stop the undesirables, as they're known, from having children. And of course, one of those other undesirable groups were gypsies. Of course, there are other undesirables like homosexuals or homeless people, many undesirable groups. Okay, so let's have a look now at our interpretation skills. So you'll remember from other videos where I've talked about these skills and gone through success criteria. If you look through the list of videos, particularly looking at Weimar Germany 1920s, there are skills to be had here. So question 1 is, how does one interpretation differ from another? So you're just describing the message in the content of the source. That's all you're doing. You don't write no more than 4 sentences needs to be written. 3 maybe, maximum. Question 2 is, why are they different? You're looking at the provenance, the who wrote it, when they wrote it, maybe even the name of the book, something like that, to explain why they are different. Okay, so we're just going to have a go at that. As I said, for more on the success criteria, then obviously do look at my other videos on particularly the Weimar Germany one, where we look at interpretations of the Golden Age. There are a more thorough explanation of those skills. But here we're having another practice at some interpretations. So here are the interpretations. You're welcome to pause and have a read through. What obviously you can see in bold the provenance. That is the who wrote it. So interpretation A is Helga Schmidt. It's got the name of the book, and it's got when it was published. Okay. Now, obviously, it's written in 2005. So that is obviously therefore fitting of an interpretation. An interpretation should be well after the event, not an eyewitness account. It's well after the event. And it's normally historians or websites or books. Now, the funny thing about these GCSE ones is quite often they're people who are there, so they're often witnesses as well. It's a bit of a funny one, really. Well, are they a primary source or their interpretation? It's a bit of a funny one. But if enough time passes, it's more of an interpretation. History has affected their viewpoint. Okay, so and then the second one again, you've got the name of the person. This person's an English person. It's written in 2007, and they're talking about things in their life that they saw as well. So again, a bit of a witness who's had their ideas changed over time. Okay, let's give this a go, shall we? And write the answer. So you're welcome to pause and give this a go. So read through extract A and summarize it in one sentence. What is the message of A? Give it a go now. Okay, so here's what I've come up with. Interpretation A has the view that many people in Germany were anti-Semitic before Hitler, but the propaganda of Hitler made it worse. Okay, so sentences like there was never any particular sympathy for the Jews in there. Certainly there was a negative attitude towards the Jews, but before Hitler did not seem to exist to that extent. So you've got sentences like that, and obviously that Hitler is making it worse. All right, so now you get the point of how to do this. Just try and summarize B in one sentence, the content, the light colored text. Okay. Pause and give it a go. All right. So here's what I've come up with. So B has a view that not everyone was anti-Semitic, as the child does not support the actions of the SS in the synagogue. Okay. Now, okay, it's a bit of a funny one here, of course, because he's an English child visiting, as you'll find from the provenance. But still, the text sort of supports this idea. Okay, now we just need to describe how they're different. So therefore, the different is one's this and the other's that. Okay, and just try and describe the view. So give that a go in one sentence if you can, two maximum. Right, so here's what I've come up with. So they're different as one view says people were anti-Semitic, and the other suggests not everyone supported the abuse towards the Jews. So people were anti-Semitic in one, whereas in another one, not everyone was anti-Semitic. So it's quite a simple difference you could talk about. Okay, possibly it's 3 marks around that. Might get 4, but maybe another sentence of description just to make the difference clear would maximize your marks. Okay, the key thing is that with this question is to only write 3 or 4 sentences. Otherwise, it will massively impact the rest of your exam. Okay, having marked this question many times, these types of questions, most people, if they write 3 or 4 sentences, get 3 or 4 marks. And the amount of people who fill the entire page or go to extra bits of paper and waste their time, there's a lot of people who do that, and it's not good for your exam technique. Okay, so next on to the second question. So this one now is why are they different? So all you need to talk about here is the provenance, that bold type around it. Who wrote it? When they wrote it? Okay, normally it's above and then the text in the exam maybe a little bit below the content message. Okay, so we're going to make a little P paragraph this time. Make a point. Interpretation A is different to interpretation B as bit of evidence. For example, it is by this person or from this time, whereas the other one's from this person or this time. And then we're going to explain, therefore they're different because. Okay, so let's give this a go. So have a look at the 2 texts in bold and then give a reason why you think interpretation A is different to B. Who's written them? What's the name of their book? When are they writing? Are any of those things going to help you? Okay, pause and have a go. Okay, so here's my idea. Interpretation A is different to B, as A was not a witness to anti-Semitism, while B was. Okay, we could take that a step further if you like. A is also German, he's indoctrinated. B is not. Okay, take that a step further if you like. Okay, so now let's pick out the evidence. Okay, so pause and give a little bit of a description about what you see in the provenance to back up that idea from both, using the word whereas as a lovely sort of contrasting word. Here's my idea. So, for example, A is by a German citizen who lived there in the 1930s and witnessed the general behavior of other Germans, whereas B is by an English child who witnessed Kristallnacht and they were clearly shocked by it. Okay, so very different provenance, of course. So they're going to have very different opinions. Their upbringing, their lives, very different. So now explain. Therefore, they're different because. Okay, pause and just give a sentence explaining why they're different, how their different lives, who they are, is going to affect their opinion on these events. So here's what I've written. So therefore, they are different because A had only been seen general anti-Semitism, as shown by the book title, of course, whereas the other had seen horrible and shocking behaviour during the Kristallnacht. And as an English boy, of course, not a German child, he had not been indoctrinated, and so found it much more shocking. Okay. So let's go on to have a look at the other question. Now, obviously, we've looked at question 3 in other videos as well. This is which is the most convincing. Now, in this one, just a reminder, you only talk about the content messages. You do not discuss provenance. You get nothing for provenance. So that just ignore who wrote it, when they wrote it, just ignore it all. Okay, it's the message. And is the message convincing? So this is like your English depth study, whether you're doing Queen Elizabeth or you're doing William, where you have an interpretation question. You've got to just pick out a message and explain with your knowledge whether you agree with it or not. It's actually quite simple. Here, though, you've got to decide which is the most convincing. So 1 paragraph for A, how convincing is it? I think it's partly convincing because, give a reason, back up with some knowledge. Maybe you could evaluate, give something good, something bad. Same for B, do its own paragraph, then give a little conclusion, which is the most convincing. Okay, so in that sense, it's relatively simplistic. So, as I said, each one needs a peel paragraph. Pick out the main message from the extract. Okay, so obviously the first one is that people were anti-Semitic before Hitler. Hitler made it worse. Okay, is that convincing? Explain with your knowledge. Only use the content, do not use the provenance, and evaluate. Try and say very or partly convincing. So your paragraph structure backs that up. If you said very convincing, I want to see a peel paragraph at the end that says furthermore it's convincing with an extra strength. If you said partly convincing, I want to see a however at the end with a negative idea. So you've got a good and a bad answer. Okay, so here's how it might look. Okay, so have a go at interpretation A. Okay, decide, is it very or partly convincing about Nazi anti-Semitism? So decide, okay, it's partly convincing because the message is that everyone was anti-Semitic and Nazis made it worse. Okay, for example, it says this, pick up maybe a little summary or quote. If you've given a nice message in the opening sentence, you can sort of maybe forget about that. Then this is convincing because get lots of knowledge. What did the Nazis do? What laws did they have? What were some of Hitler's beliefs about anti-Semitism that were shared? What about the propaganda? Some of those things you could include in there that made anti-Semitism worse, and people were maybe receptive to it. If you think it's very convincing, give a furthermore. If you think it's partly convincing, give a however. Okay, so give it a go. Write your paragraph, and I'll show you an example in a minute. Okay, so here we are. Here is an example. So you can see I've gone for very convincing about Nazi anti-Semitism because it suggests people became more anti-Semitic. Okay, give some evidence. For example, interpretation A says that people had always been anti-Semitic, but they was made worse by Hitler's actions. And then this is convincing because lots of knowledge. Okay, so I've mentioned Jude Sis, the film, the one-day boycott of Jewish shops, the Nuremberg laws, spreading all that anti-Semitism. Further made worse by children's education and indoctrinated them, biology lessons that taught race science. So all those things backing it up. Okay, so you can see I've gone with 2 different pieces of knowledge to support it. The key thing here is lots of knowledge to back up your idea. Okay, now you can give a go in the other extract and give a conclusion. So good luck with that. And yeah, keep practicing those skills. Well, I hope you found that video useful. Those interpretation skills are really crucial for the exam. Having 3 questions on the 2 extracts is very important, and make sure you're practicing lots and you have good knowledge for your how convincing question. Okay, so do look out for more videos, and as I said, there are more of those interpretation videos if you look through the other videos for that particular exam topic. Okay, but look out for more. Right, anyway, bye bye for now.